Hello, BookTube. This is the second, it's not really a second shelf, this is the second part of the bookshelf tour. I break them up as we go along, whichever way seems logical at the time. Right now we're going to go into some poetry. We'll start right off here with a book you see on BookTube fairly frequently for its type. And that's the best poems of the English language from Chaucer through Frost, selected and with commentary by Harold Bloom. And you'll see that I have many more of Mr. Bloom's books in the collection. This is the art of reading poetry is how he starts off. Then he has Chaucer, Sir Philip Sidney, I'm not going to read them all. Thomas Campion, John Donne, Ben Jonson, Will Shakespeare, John Milton, Thomas Lovell Beddoes, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, Edgar Allan Poe, John Crowe Ransom, Hart Crane, that sort of thing. So just an anthology, one person's anthology, but a well-read person, so always worthwhile having. But we'll see many more anthologies. They all have their own perspective, their own reasons for the choices. This here is the new Princeton Encyclopedia of Poetry and Poetics, edited by Alex Preminger and T.V.F. Brogan. Pretty standard work in a poetry library. This is a reprint of that by MJF Books, New York. Copyright's 93 by Princeton. So just about anything you wanted to know. It's like an encyclopedia. So assonance, carpe diem, chorus, emotion, German poetry, imagery, linguistics and poetics, and poetry theories of, romantic and post-romantic poets. So it's just a good encyclopedia of poetry. Then we have another Norton. In the previous video you saw that I like these. This is the Norton Introduction to Poetry. This is the 7th edition by J. Paul Hunter. It's a paperback. Thinking about speaker, voice, and perspective. Then a little piece on John Keats. Cultural belief and tradition. Just basically for a college course. This next one's a Writer's Digest book by Michael Bugeja, and this is the art and craft of poetry, what works, what doesn't, and why, with methods to generate poems and examples from Shakespeare to Olds. Lots of exercises in here, so nature and environmental poetry, extra natural poetry, political poetry, the title. And if you did this properly, you'd go through it a couple times with chapbooks and you would have some work when you came out. So next here, we get The Making of a Poem. And this again is a Norton Anthology of Poetic Forms by Mark Strand and Evan Boland. This is W.W. Norton and Company, New York, and this came out in 2000. So you have verse forms, the villanelle, the sestina, sonnet, ballad. You have meter, you have shaping of forms, the elegy, old, pastoral, open forms. So it's what it sounds like, poetic forms. This here is Patterns of Poetry, an encyclopedia of forms. Glare or something, isn't it? Always is. Again, a paperback thing here. Louisiana State University Press, Baton Rouge and London, by Miller Williams. So short couplet, split couplet, skeletonic couplet, heroic couplet, you get the idea. And you work your way through form. And to keep with the theme, an exaltation of forms, contemporary poets celebrate the diversity of their art, edited by Annie Finch and Catherine Barnes. So who do we have in here? So this is Ann Arbor, University of Michigan Press, and this is 2005. So let me see, we have, so Paul Hoover's doing counted verse, upper limit music, John Ridlin, iambic pentameter, Annie Finch does dactylic meter, a mini sounding C. Just page after page, section after section of these poets talking about form. Then we have something by the former poet laureate of the United States, Robert Pinsky, The Situation of Poetry, Contemporary Poetry and Its Traditions, a book I very much enjoyed, and I enjoy most of his stuff. I think years ago I used to see him on, this was Princeton University Press, Princeton, New Jersey, and this came out in '76. I used to see him on National Public Television quite a bit, commenting. Not very much anymore. This one still has an old New Yorker bookmark in it. I'll leave it there because I don't know why it's there. I read about metrical lines. This is Mary Oliver, who recently passed away. Now, this is her poetry handbook. Short thing, but handy. As you can see, I'm going back to it. What was I doing? Length and rhythm for metrical lines. So. Then we have, again, the introspections, American poets and one of their own poems, edited by Robert Pack and Jay Perini. Jay Perini is a really prolific writer. He did a biography of Robert Frost that's quite interesting and fair compared to what some of the older ones were. So this is just poets talking about their particular poems. Then we get into one of my favorite sets. I'm a little careful with it because it's older. This is the Viking Portable Library, Poets of the English Language. If I see Viking Portable Libraries around, I at least give them a look. If they're in good shape, I usually want them. In this case, it's a 5-volume set of the Poets of the English Language. So this one, edited by W.H. Auden and Norman Holmes Pearson. This is Langland the Spencer. This came out in 1950. And yeah, it's hard to beat. These will have the little footnotes to help you out and all that sort of thing. I'm just going to read you what the rest of them are because I don't like, it's not necessary to pull them all down. Marlowe to Marvell, Milton to Goldsmith, Blake to Poe, and Tennyson to Yeats. So that's this set here, one of my favorites. The next thing, again, another Harold Bloom, Ruin, The Sacred Truths, Poetry and Belief from the Bible to the Present. It's a little paperback thing, and Bloom surveys with majestic view the literature of the West from the Old Testament to Samuel Beckett. So just another Harold Bloom romp into literature, which I always enjoy. Then we have Range of the Possible, Conversations with Contemporary Poets. The interviews are by Todd Marshall. And this one is, let's see who the press is, Eastern Washington University Press, Spokane, Washington. This came out in 2002. So Christopher Howell, Edward Hirsch, Robert Haas, Gillian Connolly, Linda Beard, Nance Van Winkle, David St. John. So you get an interview with the poets. Then get very traditional here. We have the New Oxford Book of English Verse. And this is, the choices are by Helen Gardner. 1972, Oxford University Press. So Anonymous, Edmund Spencer, you got big wide margins. So this would be the standard Wordsworth anthology. Then we'll get a little more specialized here for a few minutes, and that's Beowulf. We'll start with my favorite, Seamus Heaney, a new verse translation, bilingual edition. You will see this if you've never read it, grab it. Farrar, Straus and Giroux, New York, and this is the years 2000. So you'll see it's bilingual. Absolutely magnificent. Another one here, copious notes and a beautifully produced, is J.R.R. Tolkien's Beowulf, a translation and commentary, together with the Selic Spell, edited by Christopher Tolkien. And yeah, very nice to have. This is Harbert Collins Publishers, and this is 2014. Thrilled to have it, thrilled to find it. And then another one, again Beowulf. This is one of those little Signet classics. This is actually not a paperback. It's a little, one of those library-bound volumes, and this is by Burton Raffle, translated with an introduction. A little art on there, if you can. Then I have here, and hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, The Tame by Karen Carson. This is a translation of the Tame Bo Kulang, or I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Let's see, when did this come out? This is impossible to see. Oh, 2008, excuse me. And the kingdoms of Connaught and Ulster are preparing to do battle with each other. Med, the sly and envious queen of Connaught, is on a mission to steal the fabled brown bowl of Cooley from the men of Ulster. The Ulstermen, crippled by an ancient curse, face defeat from her armies until a hero emerges in the shape of the young warrior Cú Chulainn. So a man of superhuman strength and supernatural powers. So good stuff. Even if I slaughter the pronunciation on every other page. Not the only thing I do that with, because we're going to get into somebody else, that I like reading the original. Doesn't mean I don't struggle with it, but it is doable. And I have a few versions up here, which may seem strange, but I like to sit down and just work through sections. The first volume I have is E.T. Donaldson's Chaucer's Poetry, an anthology for a modern reader. That's Wiley, publisher. Selected and edited by E.T. Donaldson of Indiana University, excuse me. John Wiley and Sons, New York. This is 1958 and 1975. So you will get it in the original, but you'll have helps, which I need. It's amazing, though, if you've been reading a while, a lot of it you can work out on your own. Doesn't hurt to double check. So nice anthology there. Then this next thing is one of these Everyman. This is the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. And this is edited by A.C. Crawley, University of Leeds. New material by Malcolm Andrew, the Queen's University of Belfast. Again, you get the helps. All line numbers. And then we got a Penguin Classics. Geoffrey Chaucer, the Canterbury Tales. This is translated into modern English by Neville Coghill. And this came out in, he did it in 51, and it looks like it's been renewed up to 77. So if you look, very different looking page here, right? So, but good to have one that's been translated just to consult. And then here is Terry Jones, Robert Yeager, Terry Dolan, Alan Fletcher, and Juliet Dorr. Who Murdered Chaucer? A Medieval Mystery. It's actually quite a beautiful book. And Terry Jones, former Monty Pythoner. New Chaucer scholar. This thing's really beautifully illustrated. It must have been very expensive to put this book together. So they're trying to figure out who murdered Chaucer. A bit of a literary detective story. When did this come out? Thomas Dunn Books, St. Martin's Press, New York. And this is from 2003. So if you find a copy, it's definitely worth reading. I almost wonder how long is this going on? Yeah, we could probably call it quits there, and then we'll pick up with move forward a little bit in time with the poetry. See how it goes. Thank you, BookTube.